Fulton County District Attorney's Office in the YSL RICO trial has filed a motion for additional time to respond to the recusal motions. All right, shout out Thugger Daily for tweeting out the document right here. Here we go. State's motion for additional time to file response, brief for recusal motion. The state of Georgia hereby moves this honorable court for a 48-hour extension of time to respond to defendant's motion to recuse Honorable Chief Judge Glanville in the trial of the above-styled case. In support of the motion, state shows this honorable court the following. Kind of ridiculous. They had over 6 days to get this done. I think it was around 6 days ago where the new judge Rachel asked them to have a response ready. Defendants Jeffrey Williams and Diamante Kendrick are currently being tried for charges of conspiracy to violate the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organization Act. We know that already. Defendant filed a motion to recuse the judge on June 17th. Kendrick filed a motion on June 12th. This honorable court entered an order requiring a response from the state no later than 5 p.m. Monday, July 8th, 2024. Today. They filed this at 3:26 p.m., an hour and a half before. The undersigned Chief Deputy District Attorney is preparing the state's response, but was unexpectedly called away from work after a medical emergency involving an immediate family member occurred. I'm not trying to throw accusations out here, but I think that's a lie. Someone was unprepared and didn't have enough time to get all this done. The state believes that it is imperative, blah, 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 to resolve this fast. The state will act without delay in submitting the state's response. We ask for a 48-hour extension only to ensure that this matter is properly addressed by the state, given the unexpected recent set of circumstances. Signed by Adrian Love. Sorry, Miss Love, I'm allergic to bullshit. If something really did happen to her family member, I'm sorry, but... And here's the judge's response. Order extending deadline for state's written response to recusal motions. The judge folded. Unreal. Having considered the brief 48-hour extension requested and the reason given for a requested extension, the motion is hereby granted. The state shall have until 5 p.m. on July 10th to file a written response to defendant Diamante Kendrick's motion. What's crazy to me is that the Fulton County District Attorney's Office has, like, I'm pretty sure hundreds of lawyers that could have stepped in and just did this for Miss Love. I mean, what was Miss Hilton doing? I mean, she was probably working on it too, but you don't have like 1 or 2 or 3 other lawyers that can step in for Miss Love and gangbang this out. What are we doing here? Now, what if Cross treated Miss Love's alleged family emergency like Judge Glanville handled Mr. Melnick's planned absence? Wouldn't that be something to behold? Yeah, the way Melnick got shafted was crazy. The judge tried to get Mr. Melnick to just cancel his non-refundable vacation to Alaska. He was like, you're coming on Monday. I have non-refundable tickets on vacation. Couldn't one of the lawyers finish it? They have enough time to file the extension, question mark. Yeah, Fulton County District Attorney's Office has hella lawyers and infinite money. Not sure why Miss Love needs to be the one, especially considering Miss Hilton is the one who's there every single day, not Love. So this is Yakati's lawyer, Doug Weinstein, that filed the motion. And the infamous Sylvia right here, she's a good reporter from Atlanta.
Motion that was submitted in regarding to extension?
Yeah, they asked for a 2-day extension of time, and the judge granted it. So that's not unusual that lawyers ask for extensions of time, and it's not unusual for a judge to grant that the first time lawyers asked for that. So nothing about that was that unusual. If they'd asked me, I would have consented to the 2 days, at least on behalf of Mr. Kendrick. But
what about your answer? Have you gotten an answer from your motion in regarding to getting her out the way?
No, the state hasn't responded to that motion. I don't know if they plan to. You know as much as I do. So far, the judge hasn't done anything with my motion to recuse the whole Fulton County bench from hearing the recusal of Glanville. I know it's getting complicated now, right? Yeah. Recusals for recusals. But
there's so many recusals going on.
Yeah, we have not heard anything from Judge Krause about that. So we'll see what happens. We have a plan for everything. Yeah, but I haven't seen him lately. But I think he's doing okay, as well as anybody can be doing that's been locked up at Rice Street for 26 months. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be a completely uncooperative guest on your show, Miss Sylvia. Because I don't like to talk about things we might do going forward.
Okay.
I'm happy to talk about things in the past. I will say that I've sat down with Katie Hingerty and we have gone through all the possible scenarios of how things can play out going forward. We have a plan for each of those scenarios. We are ready to go on a lot of those for some potential motions that may end up being filed in the future. So that's why I say we're busy still. We are prepared to act fast depending on what happens.
I mean, that's some good lawyers right there. I would imagine there's some motion for mistrials.
Mr. Kendrick's sitting there in jail. We don't want him sitting there in jail. I don't think it would be unreasonable to ask for bond under certain circumstances. If this case, for some reason, would need to be retried, I would certainly expect to ask for bond.
Can you imagine if we actually have to do this trial again? I would think they would do it better this time, and some cases would be severed and it'd be a lot more concise and maybe like a 3 to 4 month trial or something for Thug. But just imagine the shit show. I would just be livid for the taxpayers of Georgia. Like, they pissed away millions and millions of dollars into this trial that went nowhere, and the judge and the state completely botched.
Why should Mr. Kendrick continue to sit in jail? Because there have been mistakes made by other parties that caused this thing to be retried. So there's a number of scenarios where we could go back again and ask for bond.
Let's move over to the jurors. Do you think there would be a polling done on jurors to find out if they, in fact, know something is going on?
Yeah, the jurors aren't going to be on social media and seeing one of the biggest trial news in the country. Let's be honest, the jurors are seeing what's going on social media. They're watching it. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the jurors have watched my videos. That is completely unrealistic for the jurors not to see anything about this trial. It's not possible.
It's all over the world. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's all. Yeah. Well, that's always an option that the parties can ask for. But this case has received so much publicity from even before day one. And it's received a lot of publicity since the jury's been seated and they've started to hear evidence. Judge Glanville has consistently instructed them to, on their duties and their obligations and on not to seek out social media and to avoid. Presumably, they've been doing everything that the judge has instructed them on. If jurors were curious and wanted to look at things going on in the courtroom, I don't think this situation is different than any other.
But this circumstance is a little bit different. The news is showing that one of the defendants' attorney, who's, Young Thug's attorney, is being held in contempt. Then you hear the judge is being asked to be recused, right? And it's all over the news. So the assumption of them not knowing or not even seeing or hearing is kind of like, unless they're living underneath a rock.
Well, I guess I am, despite all evidence that may have presented itself in this case to the contrary, I'm going to continue to try to have faith in the system and hope that those jurors who have been following the instructions want to fulfill their obligations and could afford at least to sit through a 4 to 6 month trial. I know we're beyond that now. I'd like to think, at least for the moment, that they're continuing to do what the judge has instructed them to do.
Hold on, they were told it was 4 to 6 months?
But now their pay is being affected, and they did question their pay the other couple of times.
I don't know. I actually have no idea if they're still receiving their stipend during this period or not. You actually may know that more than I do. What's that?
I know.
I know you know. Any of these people are doing it for the $25 a day that they're getting paid.
Isn't that so? How are these people surviving? You have to be in an amazing financial situation to be chilling on this trial as a juror. $25 a day is nowhere near enough.
When Mr. Menendez was arrested, the reporting from that was, YSL attorney caught bringing drugs into the courtroom. I mean, it was ridiculous. And assaulting a deputy, I believe. And that was just ridiculous. You got prescription meds that was prescribed to him.
I covered that. I'll put an annotation on the screen if you want to see that.
Prescription meds, assaulting a deputy. Give me a break. I mean, he was tossing his phone to Matt Sharp.
And that's why I try to tell the people, this is what happened. Because I was standing there, he flipped the phone over and it just happened to brush her vest. And I'm like, okay, how did he assault the officer and he didn't hit her?
I think I saw a video clip, right? Where he alluded to maybe the transcript being redacted. I'm not sure if I saw that clip, but I feel like I may have seen that clip. Let me just say this. I have serious doubts that our court reporter, Christina Weaver, would ever do anything unethical or redact a transcript. And Judge Glanville, I do not believe if he says he's given us an unredacted transcript that he would redact anything. I think he's a straight shooter on that. So given that both of them were straight shooters, I would think the transcript is accurate. That does not mean that there were not things that occurred in that room during that ex parte meeting where the court reporter wasn't present, and that would not appear in the transcript. So that's all I'll say about that. I will say that I know that there are things that are in my affidavit that I filed back in June 12th that are not in that transcript, and I am still confident that everything I put in my affidavit is accurate.
He has doubts, but he doesn't have doubts. He isn't sure almost.
The answer is, I don't know, but I know that it is the normal practice of our court reporter, from what I've seen in court, for her to make audio recordings of everything.
I'd be surprised if there isn't an audio recording of the ex parte meeting. There has to be. And I'm sure at some point it's going to come out. Actually, I'm not sure, but I hope it does.
She does audio because sometimes she has to go back and listen to it because she might have missed somebody's dialect and what they're saying if they enunciate the word differently, and she'll go repeat it so she could get the right words in there.
Yeah, and that's why, by the way, you'll see that look on her face in court sometimes. She's really focusing. She's really concentrating, trying to pick up what everybody's saying. So yeah, that's my understanding too. And I've been dealing with court reporters for over 25 years. They usually record so they can go back and make sure they got everything down correctly because they really want things to be accurate. If there wasn't an audio recording, that would surprise me.
I just said the same thing.
So how do you feel about Woody on YouTube talking?
I've been seeing a lot of people upset that Woody and Bumpus are talking a little too much. Not a lot of people, but I've seen a few little comments. So I don't think it's a big deal, but let's see what the lawyer says.
I think it certainly refutes the state's position that he's afraid of us. Because if he's afraid of us, why is he out there all over social media showing his location and living his best life? Mr. Copeland is going to do what Mr. Copeland does. Again, I like the fact that it demonstrates, and by the way, he has no reason to be afraid of us. So this whole state's position that, he's changed his story because he's in the same room as we are, and this thing that they're getting at, that they're hinting at. Afraid of us, he wouldn't be all over social media showing his location and where he's hanging out.
Next, do you think the judge will step aside?
Well, he's had an opportunity to do that. He could have stepped aside at any point. He's shown no inclination to do that. I'm not going to get into his head. I don't have any indication that the judge believes he did anything wrong and should step aside.
He doesn't think he did anything wrong. You can tell in his attitude when he was releasing the transcript. He said multiple times that he thinks everything was proper.
Believes that he is unbiased. I no longer believe that. I believed it for a long time, but I no longer believe that. But I think he is doing his best, and I think he thinks he's being unbiased. So I don't think he likely believes there's any reason for him to step aside.
Why is the prosecution able to use crimes that was dismissed in overt act?
I've complained about this so much.
We've got a real problem with the Georgia RICO statute. It's very broad. It allows the state to bring in all kinds of things by alleging them as overt acts. They can also bring in other material that would normally be excluded under this Rule 404B, what they call 404B acts, other acts that aren't even overt acts. They're not even listed in the indictment as overt acts, and they'll bring those in. But there's a big problem with the Georgia RICO statute being overly broad, and that's something we may have to address at some point. What happens if the judge doesn't get recused? Well, there's potential maybe for us to be able to appeal that. If the judge doesn't get recused, the case carries on. It carries on.
Wouldn't there be some bad blood?
Well, you know, we're all human, and you'd like to think the judge can put it aside, but yeah, we'll see if it gets there.
All right, I'm gonna end the video here. Shout out Infamous Sylvia. I'll put her channel down below. She's really nice. Got some insight on what Doug Weinstein is thinking, but who knows what's gonna happen, boys. State has to respond on Wednesday, so I'll cover that. Hit subscribe. Love you guys. Peace out.